Hello, everybody. I'm so delighted to meet you on the occasion of our 24-hour world tour. I am Aurélie Beaupel. I am CEO of my consulting company in digital transformation and cybersecurity. And by the way, I'm also the ambassador of the French chapter of Women in Tech Global Movement. I'm so honored that the minister responsible of women's rights in France, Elisabeth Moreno, is the godmother of our global event today. As a reminder, the French chapter acts alongside the Women in Tech Global Movement for the empowerment of 5 million women by 2030. The aim is to encourage women to flourish through tech and digital technology. You can join us via our community platform, www.women-in-tech.net, where you will find all our chapters. You will be informed of the events and programs that we are setting up in France. These are awareness-raising programs for digital professions, learning to code, mentoring, etc., etc. But right now, I invite you to listen to 3 inspiring women who make take in France today. Let me introduce you to Florence Richardson, President of Femmes Business Angels, Linney, CEO of Qualys and President of Femmes du Numérique du Syntec Numérique, and Alban Bressol-Châtaignier, Chief People Officer at Back Market. They illustrate our topic of the day, Be Inspired, Women in Action in Tech in France. Enjoy your discovery.
Hello, Women in Tech. I'm very happy to be with you this morning. I'm Florence Richardson. I'm the president of Femmes Business Angel, a female investors network in France. A few words about me. I graduated with a master's degree in engineering a long time ago, completed by a business degree. And I began my career in the financial sector, where I spent about 15 years. And after that, I started up and I co-founded my own company with my co-founder in consulting and Salesforce outsourcing. But 10 years ago, I started to look at investments, and pretty much the last 10 years of my career were dedicated to investments in startups and innovation. I joined Femmes Business Angel in 2009, and I've invested in over 30 companies, so over 30 startups since then. I'm a board member of quite a few of them, or have been, and I'm also a board member of a listed company acting in the supply chain management systems and in the financial sector. So, what is Femmes Business Angel? We are a network, an association, a non-profit association created in 2003, and we are pretty much the only female business angel network in France and one of the major ones in Europe, and we want to give visibility to women in this very masculine ecosystem. Our network counts about 150 active investors in Paris and everywhere else in France, and our vocation is to finance and to support the creation of innovative and high potential startups, whether run by men or women, because our main goal is really to facilitate the involvement of women in investment, to make women realize that they can do it, that it's really interesting, and that they have a lot to bring to the startups and globally to the ecosystem. So we actually, by bringing more women to the table, we also promote and help the creation and the development of more businesses led by women. We invest in very early stage companies, pre-seed, seed, a few €100,000. Last year, or pretty much every year, we invest in about 20 companies, amounts between 1 million and 1.5 million globally. And what's very interesting is that 30 to 50% of these amounts are invested in female-led companies, which is way above the average of the market. So what about funding women? What about innovation? A quick focus on female entrepreneurship in France. Officially, situation is improving. 40% of the companies are created by women. However, if you look closer at the figures, it's not that great because for innovative startups, especially tech startups, figures are much lower. And depending on the studies, they're between 5 and 10% max of startups managed by women. So if we take the angle of the financing, I think it is very striking, or the figures are striking, and the conditions for access to financing for women are really incredible. I'll try not to give too many figures, but I really want to point out the incredible imbalance in innovation financing. Globally, if you look at the numbers of startups or the number of the amounts invested, in terms of numbers, and I refer to a recent study done by BCG, Boston Consulting Group for SISTA, movement in France, 84% in 2020, 84% of funded startups are funded by men, 13% by mixed teams, and 3% by women. And in terms of amounts, it's even worse because 91% of the total amounts raised by startups in 2020 were raised by masculine teams, 8% by mixed teams, and 1% only by women team. And if you look now at per project, not only there are very few numbers of startups led by women, but they are less financed than men. Globally, men teams raise 2.3 times more money than women teams. And the difference widens, increases with bigger roundtables. If you look, that's the figures of 2020, but basically these figures have been as bad for the last years, obviously. And if I refer to a recent study led by Deloitte for France Invest. France Invest is the federation of VCs in France. If I look at a recent study that they've done, it shows that 10% of the participations of the VCs belonging to France Invest have a female president, CEO, or manager. So why so many difference in this innovation industry? At Femme Business Angel, we've really looked into this particular issue, and we've read a lot of studies, and we've tried to analyze the reasons why women raise less money than men. These studies, they point out different things like the education, the cultural issues with money, less money to start up, differences of ambition, risk, adversity, the underrepresentation of women in engineering school, and especially in coding, big data, intelligence, artificial intelligence, where these sectors are obviously sectors that are very innovating and high growth companies. I believe as well that one of the key issues is that the funding ecosystem is very masculine. If I look at my environment, the one I'm in every day, why was Femme Business Angel created? Because right now, and it was the same or even worse 15 years ago, there are about more than 90% business angels are men, only 10% are women. In the private equity sectors, figures, and these are figures from France Invest Deloitte, study on parity, 27% of women, there are 27% of women in investment teams, but it goes down as we go up to the executive level. And we really believe that this male overrepresentation among investors generates major bias, whether they're conscious or not. For example, there's a gendered institutional vision of entrepreneurship. I guess women have less than the man the attributes of a successful entrepreneur in the collective imagination. Strong growth, ambition, conquest, performance. These are very masculine attributes. And so it impacts the way investors analyze the project and the team and the perspective. A young entrepreneur, a young woman, told me once, when I raised money, there were only men on the other side of the table. And they often ask questions that have nothing to do with business, and they wouldn't dare ask a man. Second bias is sectorial. The sectors where the intensity of innovation and technology are the highest are culturally and educationally more men's sectors, because there is, as I said earlier, very few women in notably business as engineering school or science education. The third point is that when you're a man, and if you're a decision maker, you tend to identify, even if it is unconscious, with somebody who looks like you, who is like you, who acts like you. And so men tend to invest in profiles that are similar to them. And it's been studied and demonstrated by several studies. And finally, we don't have enough women as models for women, so that other women realize that they could do it, but also models for men investors to make them realize that women can be great entrepreneurs and that as an investor they don't take higher risks when investing in a woman-led startup. On the contrary, so really successful women entrepreneurs need to be brought forward. I have an anecdote, for example, which shows it's really not impossible to be a man and a successful entrepreneur in tech or in innovation and raise money. We funded, Fan Business Angel funded a few years ago, a company called Wild Coast Code School, coding school in France and in Europe. And the founder, she was signing a second fundraise, a second round of investment, and she was about to give birth to a third child. And when we asked her the question, how do you do? She said, well, it takes a lot of organization and a lot of support, but she was doing it. So what do we do to improve this situation? I strongly believe we need definitely more women in investment. It's changing. And notably in the ecosystem, the VC ecosystem, with the recent movements, I mentioned Sista or the chart France Invest signed recently, movements to raise awareness of the importance of women in investment team. More women recruited, more attention to statistics. At Fan Business Angel, this is really what we've been working for more than 15 years. Having more investors and interest women in investment and shareholding. We do a lot of education, we do a lot of seminars, we communicate a lot, we accompany our investors to help them during their first steps. And we created a major event called WINDE, Women in Investment, the first Women in Investment Forum. First edition was 2017. The last one was in 2020, in March, and was supported by our finance minister and our former women's rights minister. And it gathered more than 500 persons. We conducted many studies, analysis, to understand why so few women are interested in investing in startups or investing globally. And in March last year, 2020, we published a white paper called Investment and Shareholding Levels of the Economic Success of Women. And please do not hesitate to charge it to look at it from on our website. It's in French, it's in English, and it's on our website, fanbusinessangel.org. Because the consequence of putting more women in front of investors, women in front of entrepreneur, it works. It works, and we are the proof of it. 30 to 50%, as I said, of our funds are directed to company carried by mixed or women's team. Anyway, as a conclusion, and to finish on a positive note, I think there are two key points today. The first one is that mixity is finally considered as and demonstrated as being a factor of performance. And that's really important. And the second one is actually social and environmental engagement. It does give women a head start because they're very into this kind of project. For example, in 2020, half of the project we financed in FVR were called impact project, and more than half of them were actually carried out by mixed or women's team. So I believe that the realization, even the demonstration that a more inclusive, a more mixed, a more diverse society creates more added value for business and for all stakeholders. And it really allows us to expect that beyond the social issues or justice, diversity is finally a new level of a more sustainable and more efficient economy for decision makers, whether they are men or women. Thank you very much and have a very nice day.
Hi, I'm Linney, CEO and co-founder of Qualys. I'm also board member of Syntec Numérique, the French digital branch organization that gathers more than 2,000 companies and represents 80% of the branch turnover. I'm president of its Innovation and Technology Committee and also president of its Digital Woman program. I'm also involved in the European AI and voice ecosystem. I'm co-founder and vice president of Le Voice Lab, an association that works to federate the voice ecosystem and to create an alternative offer to the voice tech and solution in Europe. My company, Talker AI by Qualys, is a French independent editor and supplier of bot technology, platform and code-free conversational AI dedicated to the business. Expert in smart virtual assistant, voice bots, call bots, and chatbots for any business and any field of activity, Qualys is also specialist in user experience and voice, and assists the transformation of organizations to improve interactions with their various audiences through conversations. I'm convinced that after mobile first, we have the conversational first. The presence of growth of assistance is proof of this trend, which is becoming more and more widespread. For our organization, it is a question of optimization, personalization, and user relations. All businesses will be reinvented thanks to assistance. And the voice interface will have a real impact on daily life. More than 8 billion voice assistants are expected by 2024. And these assistants are not only for personal or home use. They are also for corporate and business use cases. Speaking by voice is the most natural, fast, and intuitive. The voice interface will take the ascendancy because it is the most inclusive. It is accessible for all, and it requires no effort. But innovation in the voice channel does not only come from assistants on connected speakers or connected objects. Innovation and disruption can also be found on a very traditional voice channel, the telephone. When you call your bank, an administrative service, or an energy supplier, for example, you often get an answering machine or an IVR system, interactive voice response system. Today, thanks to several technologies, and in particular speech recognition and language processing, it is possible to have a guided or unguided conversation with a voice assistant on the phone that we name Callbot. This improves the user relationships and increases the efficiency of the teams by relieving them of low added value tasks. 3 years ago, we co-founded the Voice Lab Association with other companies and all the research labs in the field of voice in France. Its mission is to federate the French voice players to create an alternative and a sovereign voice offer. We have just taken a major step in the development of an independent voice offer thanks to a 4.7 million euros grant from the BPI. The Voice Lab is a winner of the French program d'Investissement d'Avenir and also winner of the call for projects entitled Mutualization of Resources and Services for Sector and Digital Platforms. This main goal is to contribute to development of a voice services and data marketplace and to promote the sharing of the voice data on a national scale. The Voice Lab will have 3 missions with this project. First of all, create a French corpus of 100,000 hours of voice data and put this voice data in a neutral and secure space. Second of all, create a speech recognition engine. And the third, but not least, create a French or even European marketplace for voice services. As for all digital sectors, in the conversational and voice sectors, there is a lack of women. Artificial intelligence is a field that could suit women, especially the language and the voice part. According to a 2018 study on the needs for jobs, skills and training in artificial intelligence sector in France, the industry could be looking for about 7,500 additional AI data science specialists by 2023. For example, Qualys with Talker AI is the only French pure player of conversational AI or voice domain co-founded or directed by women. There are a lot of opportunities in AI and voice in coming years, and we need women as well to enrich our teams and prevent the creation of bias with male-dominated teams. In conclusion, whatever the technology or innovation, the most important is the user, the human, you and me. The human is at the center of every technology, every innovation, and the technology only helps to develop it. That's why we, the players of AI and voice field, have to be responsible and ethical in order to create trust and set the conditions for the spread of our technologies.
Hi everyone, I'm Alban. I've been working for the past 10 years in fast-growing and tech-oriented companies from startup to scale-ups. I am currently Chief People Officer at Back Market for the past 2 years, and I am passionate about my work, especially creating and developing strong, empowering and inclusive company cultures. I personally have a 2-year-old daughter, and it has been a big trigger in my fight for gender equality, as I really believe we have the power to build a workplace where it's not as hard for my daughter as it was for me to find my place as a leader. Back Market is the marketplace dedicated exclusively to refurbished electronic devices, so we are here to provide a more affordable, reliable and ecological alternative to purchase brand new products. We have just raised $335 million for our Series D, and we are now almost 500 employees across our offices in France, Germany, and in the US. Taking part in Back Market's adventure means committing to an ambitious project with a strong social and environmental impact. We are leading the way in a shift towards a circular economy, freeing the planet from electronic waste and building a global leading tech company. As per our culture, we have a say at Back Market, we say sabotage. So sabotage is our call to action, but it's also how we see ourselves, like a free-spirited and loving tribe. And loving tribe means that we care deeply about our backmakers, and we are committed to provide an inclusive and caring work environment. So what do we do in terms of inclusion at Back Market? I love to start always this question by a little anecdote. So when I'm interviewing candidates, the usual question I get is, why did you join Back Market? And usually my answer is, when I decided I was ready to re-enter the workforce just after giving birth to my daughter, I was interviewing for a couple of startups, including Back Market, and out of the 15 ish interviews, I was asked about 10 times if I could be 100% focused in the new role as a new mom. And my answer was always the same. Would you have asked me that if I was a man? Some of the interviewers understood and agreed that the interview was a sexist one, but still wanted me to answer. And others became tense, very few even offended for being confronted with this bias. And none of those 10 interviews were with Back Market. So not to say that Back Market was perfect when I first joined, but from the get-go, it was already a company with a strong value system embedded in it. So from the interview process, I got the impression that my value would be assessed fairly, or at least as fairly as they could, and not with any strings attached just because I happen to be a mom with the nerve to raise a child and while pursuing a career. And that's about my first point, actually. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are not just HR matters. So the values of a company need to have the concrete support of its founders, of the C-level executives, and other leaders. When we started our journey to be more inclusive, the exec committee first met all together to agree that we had a problem. And we still have a problem. And I'm going to be blunt, I don't know any company that doesn't have this problem. And starting by acknowledging that we need to fix things is a big step. And the second step was to commit all together that we needed to put tremendous effort on a lot of things to make things better. Not right, because it's a never-ending issue. So diversity, inclusion, you always have to put some effort into it. But it needs to be agreed with every leader that it will cost more, that it will take more time to hire, for example, and that they will have all a role to play in the matter to do things right. After agreeing on this, we've been launching a lot of initiatives ever since. So I'm not going to cite them one by one, otherwise it will be a very long list à la Prévert and very boring. But there's some insights that I wanted to introduce here. The first one is policy. So it's not a really nice thing, it's not a happy initiative to start with, but I think it's one of the most important to ensure a workplace is safe for every woman. So when it comes to diversity and inclusion, you also have to talk about the bad and the ugly, and to make sure you're putting in place everything that goes against it. So we've implemented anti-harassment and discrimination policies, as well as an alerting protocol in case there's an abuse. I feel there's a real power by stating clearly that there's a zero tolerance policy against discrimination. The second part of our policies was to make a better offer for our parents. So being a young mom and having discussed with a lot of future and new moms inside the organization, having a child is of course a blast, but it triggers a lot of anxiety for women in their career. So also maternity leave is one of the highest factors of salary discrepancy between men and women. So in order to give some serenity to the women in your organization and to ensure fairness and gender equality, I encourage every organization to clearly state their parental engagement and challenge them regularly. At Back Market, the first thing we did was to sign the Parental Act, committing to a fully paid 1 month parental leave for the second parents. You can argue that it is not directly for the future mom, but it is. Equality goes also by giving the partner enough time to spend with their family. Apart from that, our parental engagements are simple, so we helping expecting mothers to prepare their transition to maternity leave. We are ensuring to maintain all bonuses and all financial incentives during their leave and analyze any compensation gap at their return. We are dedicating time with both their people partner and the manager at their return to discuss career goals and potential childcare arrangements. And we are offering flexible working time and phased return. And of course, we have arranged a private breastfeeding space in our offices. So it doesn't seem much, but it's really important because for all the women out there that are becoming moms or who are already moms, you know that it's a stressful time. So we're trying to find a very serene way to give some time to our moms. The second effort for me, for an organization to be more inclusive, is to give the women employees some space to grow. So as a woman, when you reach your first job, you've already got less self-confidence teachings and learning than a man at the same age, whatever your education, your family, and your background. So it's unfair and it should be corrected. That's why we've created the Anne Bonny's Club at Back Market, the employee resource group for all our women. I don't expect this club to make us all superwomen, but to correct a bit of the discrepancies the system put us through since we were born. So since this creation of the club, we're having lectures, presentations, workshops, and training about leadership, about motherhood, about self-confidence. We are sharing articles, and we've also started co-mentorship. This club is amazing, and it also creates the network very often women were not included in. Finally, for me, the last focus to get a more inclusive company is we've talked about policies, we've talked about the our women's club, but we are missing a key element here. Inclusion and gender equality cannot be just a woman's problem. So we need everyone, and especially allies, to fight this the system. So if you want to be more inclusive, you need your employees to be 100% aligned on the effort you're putting in place. And the best way to ensure that is to start with the managers. So we wanted to make sure our managers had the right tools to onboard and retain talents from all borders and genders. We have decided to train our manager on diversity and inclusion. So the program has been defined and personalized for Back Market's need with our great partners who are Gloria. So Gloria community, just Google it. And we had 4 modules. The first one is about awareness. So what is D&I and what's the managerial stake on it. The second one is developing an inclusive culture. So how to act as a manager. The third part is about hiring. So hiring without discrimination, how to act as a recruiter, how to make sure you recognize the bias that you may have during interviews. And the fourth is about sexism. So prevent sexism and gender-based bias. So the role of the manager in that is crucial to make sure that you're enforcing a very inclusive culture. Now you can ask me, is it working? So how do you measure the success of your efforts? That's a really tough question, but I can see that you can see it by the people that you have inside the organization through pulse survey, for example. How they feel, and at Back Market we are lucky enough that our employees feel that they are belonging, and that's a really easy question to ask everyone. Do you feel included in your company, organization, and culture? Also, I could answer by a little anecdote that I received an email from my CEO yesterday. He's invited to a panel discussion with very high-level executives. And after looking at the list of speakers, he told me, there's only white, wealthy men in the panel. I don't think that's right. Is there someone in our organization that has expertise on the subject and that shows diversity? And I feel that really qualifies as a major success. Finally, if I can give some advice to all the women out there that want to grow in their career, I have 3 things that I learned in my professional life. The first thing is really to follow your passion. So find your vision, find what you love to do, and really don't compromise about it. So find the job that is really reflecting what you love to do. The second thing is to be gentle. Be gentle with yourself. We as women put ourselves in very high standards, and it's really hard. So recognize the effort that you're making, recognize all the successes, because there's a lot of successes that you've done already. And yes, be kind to yourself. And the third thing for me is really about taking risk. So put yourself out there. You see a promotion that you want, go for it, even if you don't have all the skills. If you want to take this project, just raise your hand. If you want to say something in a meeting, just do it. Don't be, don't get feared about other people judgments. It's really not about that. It's really about you and what you feel. So just put yourself out there, take some risks, and follow your passion.